You know, I drank when my team won, and I drank when my team lost, and I drank when my team played, and I drank when my team was in the off season, and I thought...
Some of rock's greatest legends weren't just battling fame. They were battling addictions that nearly killed them. And for some, addiction won. In this video, we're counting down 12 rock legends whose battles became almost as infamous as the music. Starting at number 12 is Kurt Cobain, a grunge icon whose addiction, combined with deep depression, destroyed him right as his fame hit its peak. Kurt Cobain was born in 1967 in Aberdeen, Washington. He formed Nirvana in 1987 with Krist Novoselic. In 1991, the album Nevermind changed rock music and pushed grunge into the mainstream. The song Smells Like Teen Spirit became an anthem for a generation. Cobain's voice carried anger, sadness, and honesty that many young people connected with. As Nirvana's fame exploded, the spotlight became something Cobain feared more than failure. He often said he felt uncomfortable with sudden success. He also suffered from chronic stomach pain for years, which he claimed led him to use as relief. What started as relief quietly turned into dependency and then into something he couldn't control. His affected tours, interviews, and recording sessions. There were canceled shows and public incidents that worried fans. In March 1994, he overdosed in Rome and survived after being hospitalized. Friends and family became more concerned about his mental health and substance abuse. In April 1994, Cobain left a rehab facility in Los Angeles and returned to Seattle. On April 8, 1994, he was found dead in his home from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Toxicology reports showed in his system. He was 27 years old. His death shocked the world and marked the end of Nirvana. It also added his name to the list of artists who died young at the age of just 27. Despite his short life, Cobain influenced rock music in a lasting way. His songwriting was simple but deeply emotional. He spoke openly about pain, isolation, and feeling out of place. Kurt Cobain's story isn't only about musical success. It's about how addiction and untreated mental health struggles can spiral when fame adds even more pressure. Fame brought him wealth and attention, but it did not protect him from inner battles. His life remains a powerful reminder that behind iconic songs often lies very real suffering. Coming in at number 11 is Ozzy Osbourne. The legendary metal icon whose struggles with addiction became as well known as his music. Ozzy Osbourne didn't just experiment with he lived for them. Alcohol, LSD, and prescription pills controlled his life for decades. During Black Sabbath's most successful years, Ozzy was rarely sober, which led to bad performances, problems in the studio, and his firing in 1979. What seemed like the end of his career actually led to one of the greatest solo comebacks in rock history. At his lowest point, Ozzy's addiction erased entire stretches of his memory. He later admitted there were albums he barely remembered recording. Infamous moments like the Bat incident, public arrests, and angry outbursts weren't just rock and roll theater, they were signs of serious addiction. His marriage to Sharon Osbourne survived repeated relapses, breakdowns, and public scandals, largely due to her constant intervention. Over time, the damage became impossible to ignore. Long-term health issues, injuries, and Parkinson's disease forced Ozzy to confront the cost of decades of excess. Unlike many of his peers, he lived long enough to seek sobriety and openly acknowledge the destruction caused. His survival doesn't erase the damage, but it proves that even the wildest stories don't always have to end in tragedy. At number 10 is Keith Richards, a legendary example of how fame and addiction often collide in rock history. Keith Richards is a legendary guitarist and songwriter for the Rolling Stones, pioneers of modern rock rebellion. His relationship with became so extreme that it became part of his legend, sometimes threatening to overshadow his music itself. To pills and alcohol, Richards spent decades living at a level most people wouldn't survive. During the late 1960s and 1970s, dominated his life, affecting not just his health, but also the band's studio sessions, touring plans, and internal dynamics. At times, the Rolling Stones' schedule bent around what he could physically handle. Despite repeated arrests, close calls, and visible physical decline, Richards continued performing at an elite level. His 1977 in Toronto put him at risk of serious prison time, a moment that forced him to confront the consequences of his lifestyle. Even then, sobriety came slowly and inconsistently. Richards has said were never just about partying. They were tied to creativity, escape, and self-destruction. In interviews and his autobiography, Life, he speaks about addiction without glamour, describing it as a harsh routine rather than a thrill. Though he eventually scaled back, the physical toll of those years is still visible. At number 9 is Nikki Sixx, a rock star whose life was nearly destroyed by Nikki Sixx was born as Frank Carlton's Serafino Ferrana Jr. He became the bassist and main songwriter for the band Motley Crue. The band rose to fame in the 1980s with loud music and wild shows. He helped shape their sound and public image. Success came fast, and the band became one of the biggest names in rock. As fame grew, his use became more serious. Took control of his daily life and choices. He often used before shows and recording sessions. His addiction hurt his health and damaged his relationships. The chaos around him became normal, even when it was dangerous. In December 1987, he suffered a heroin overdose. For 2 minutes, he was clinically dead until paramedics brought him back. This moment showed how close he was to losing everything. His body was weak, and his career was at risk. Years later, he chose to become sober and rebuild his life. He has spoken openly about the pain addiction caused. His story is not about glory, but survival. Nikki Sixx's life shows how quickly addiction can take control and how difficult it is to take your life back. At number 8 is Tommy Lee, a rock drummer whose life was shaped by fame, addiction, and consequences. Tommy Lee co-founded Motley Crue in 1981 and became known for his loud and energetic drumming. The band's albums, including Shout at the Devil and Dr. Feelgood, helped define 1980s hard rock. Their success brought money, attention, and constant touring. With fame came heavy drinking and use. During the band's peak years, Tommy Lee struggled with the non-stop partying blurred the line between celebration and self-destruction. He has admitted in interviews that substance abuse hurt his relationships and decision-making. His addiction also played a role in serious legal trouble. In 1998, he was arrested for assaulting Pamela Anderson and later served jail time. He has said alcohol fueled his anger and poor choices during that period. The arrest damaged his public image and added strain to his personal life. Over the years, he entered rehab several times. There were moments of sobriety followed by relapse. In later interviews, he spoke openly about trying to take control of his drinking. He has shared that watching others struggle with addiction made him reflect on his own path. Tommy Lee continues to perform and create music. His story isn't just about fame and headlines, it's also about how addiction can fracture trust, trigger legal consequences, and leave damage that lasts for years. At number 7 is Janis Joplin, a powerful blues rock singer whose addiction cut her life short. Janis Joplin rose to fame in the late 1960s as the lead singer of Big Brother and the Holding Company. Her breakout performance at the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967 brought national attention. Her voice was raw, emotional, and full of pain. Songs like Piece of My Heart and later Me and Bobby McGee made her one of the most recognized female voices in rock. As her career grew, so did her struggle with She battled addiction during her rise to fame. Friends and bandmates noticed her mood swings and periods of isolation. Though she tried to stay clean at times, she returned to while recording her final album, Pearl. Her addiction damaged her health and made her personal life unstable. Even at the height of fame, she often felt completely alone. On October 4th, 1970, Janis Joplin was found dead in a Los Angeles hotel room. The cause was a overdose, and she was 27 years old. Her death shocked the music world and added her name to the growing list of young artists lost to drugs. Pearl was released after her death and became a #1 album. Janis Joplin's story shows that addiction can exist even behind massive talent and success. Coming in at number 6 is Lane Staley, a powerful grunge vocalist whose battle with addiction slowly claimed his life. Lane Staley was the lead singer of Alice in Chains. His voice was strong, emotional, and instantly recognizable. In the early 1990s, the band rose to become one of the biggest names in rock. Songs like Man in the Box and Rooster brought them worldwide fame. His lyrics often delved into pain, fear, and inner struggle. As the band's success grew, his use deepened. He also battled other drugs over the years. Addiction gradually took over his daily life and ravaged his body. His weight plummeted and his health visibly declined. Recording sessions slowed and live shows became increasingly rare. By the mid to late 1990s, he withdrew from the public eye. Alice in Chains went on break because he wasn't feeling well enough to tour. He spent most of his time alone, cut off from friends and bandmates. That isolation only made recovery more elusive. On April 5th, 2002, Lane Staley died from a drug overdose in his Seattle home. He was just 34 years old. His death silenced one of grunge's most honest and compelling voices. Lane Staley's story is a stark reminder of how addiction can extinguish even the most gifted artists. At number 5 is Steven Adler, a rock drummer whose battle with addiction cut short his climb to stardom. Steven Adler was the original drummer for Guns N' Roses. He helped shape the sound of their 1987 album Appetite for Destruction. The album became one of the best-selling debut records in rock history. His loose, groove-based drumming gave the band its early energy and swing. As the band's fame exploded, his use grew worse. He struggled heavily with during the late 1980s. His addiction affected rehearsals, recording sessions, and live shows. During the making of Use Your Illusion, he was often unable to perform properly. In 1990, Guns N' Roses fired him because of his drug problems. By that time, his health had suffered serious damage. Years of substance abuse led to a stroke in 1996, which left him needing to relearn how to speak. He entered rehab many times over the years and spoke openly about relapse and recovery struggles. Steven Adler later rebuilt parts of his life and returned to performing. He has shared his story in interviews and in his memoir, My Appetite for Destruction. His journey shows how addiction can remove someone from the very success they helped build. Steven Adler's story is a clear reminder that talent alone cannot protect anyone from the cost of. At number 4 is Sid Vicious, a punk figure whose life was taken over by and chaos. Sid Vicious joined the Sex Pistols in 1977 and quickly became their most shocking face. He was not known for strong playing, but for his look and anger. Fame came fast, and he did not have time to grow into it. Many people saw him as the dark side of punk. Use took over his life almost right away. It fed his fear, his doubt, and his need to escape. He also became deeply tied to Nancy Spungen, and their relationship turned harmful. They lived in isolation, and their days often centered on and fighting. As his addiction grew, his health got worse, and his live shows suffered. On stage, he often could not play well, and he leaned on noise and attitude. Offstage, his actions became more unstable and risky. In 1978, Nancy was found dead in their hotel room from a stab wound, and Sid was arrested. Before the case went to trial, he died from a overdose on February 2, 1979. He was 21, and the damage was already beyond repair. His story is a brutal reminder of how quickly addiction can erase a young life. Coming in at number 3 is Brian Jones, one of the founders of the Rolling Stones, whose struggles with abuse tragically led to his early death. Brian Jones was born Lewis Brian Hopkins Jones in England. He formed the Rolling Stones in 1962 and helped shape their early sound. He played many instruments and gave the band a blues style. In the beginning, he was the group's leader and main creative force. As fame grew, his heavy use increased. He was arrested several times in the late 1960s for possession. He became unpredictable, fragile, and increasingly disconnected from the band he built. Other band members grew frustrated with his missed sessions and unstable actions. By 1969, his use had damaged his role in the band. The Rolling Stones asked him to leave in June of that year. Less than a month later, on July 3, 1969, Brian Jones was found in his swimming pool at age 27. His death was ruled as drowning, with found in his system. Brian Jones helped build one of the greatest rock bands in history, but addiction stripped away his focus, his health, and ultimately his place in the band he founded. At number 2 is Alice Cooper, a shock rock pioneer who nearly lost his life to. Alice Cooper was born Vincent Damon Fernier in 1948. He became famous in the early 1970s for wild stage shows and dark themes. Songs like School's Out and No More Mr. Nice Guy made him a rock star. His band mixed theater with hard rock, creating a new style that shocked audiences. The more famous he became, the more he drank. What began as social drinking turned into daily heavy use. He has said he drank bottles of each day during the mid to late 1970s. Slowly damaged his body and affected his thinking. He often felt paranoid and physically weak, even while touring. By 1978, his condition had become dangerous. He entered a sanitarium in New York to seek treatment for. Doctors warned him that his health was at serious risk if he continued drinking. The time in treatment forced him to face how much control had over his life. After leaving rehab, he committed to sobriety. He has remained sober for decades and often speaks openly about recovery. In interviews, he has said that getting sober saved both his life and career. His later albums and tours showed that he could succeed without controlling him. Alice Cooper's story is different from many others in rock history. He came close to self-destruction, but he chose to change before it was too late. At number 1 is Dave Mustaine, a metal guitarist whose nearly destroyed his career and life. Dave Mustaine first gained fame as the original lead guitarist of Metallica in 1982. He was dismissed from the band in 1983 due to heavy drinking and violent behavior during tours. After being fired, he formed Megadeth, which became one of the big 4 thrash metal bands. Albums like Peace Sells, But Who's Buying, and Rust in Peace helped define the genre. As Megadeth gained fame in the late 1980s, his substance abuse grew worse. He struggled with alcohol for many years. His addiction caused arrests, rehab stays, and serious tension within the band. During the 1990s, he went into treatment multiple times, but ended up relapsing more than once. In 2002, he suffered a severe arm injury after falling asleep with his arm compressed while under the influence. Doctors told him he might never play guitar again. This health crisis became a turning point. He committed to sobriety and went through long physical therapy to regain movement in his arm. Dave Mustaine eventually returned to the stage and continued leading Megadeth. His story proves that change is possible when someone finally chooses discipline over self-destruction. These were 12 rock legends whose battles with addiction became as unforgettable as their music. Some survived and found redemption. Others weren't given that chance. Their stories remind us that fame doesn't shield anyone from pain, and talent alone can't defeat addiction. If you found this video meaningful, let us know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories from rock history.